Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor to welcome NATO Secretary General Mr. Stoltenberg to the National Library of Georgia. It is really symbolic that this meeting is taking place here, because this building keeps a number of very important masterpieces of Georgian literature, reflecting Georgia's national and therefore European identity. Just a couple of months ago, we celebrated 25 years of Georgia's independence. Even very brief review of Georgia's recent history shows that since early 90s, Georgia had to undergo through very difficult turbulences. Over that period of time, NATO-Georgia relations had always been instrumental in developing Georgia's defense and democratic institutions. And now, North Atlantic Council's fourth, and personally Secretary General's second visit to Georgia are clear demonstration of NATO's very strong support to Georgia, to its territorial integrity, sovereignty, foreign policy aspirations, and democratic development. Georgia, as the European country bridging east to the west and providing strategically important transit opportunities for relevant interested parties, plays a significant role in strengthening cooperation among different countries from the different regions. It is worth mentioning that country with 20% of its territories occupied steadily demonstrates its strong commitments to the principles of peaceful settlements of territorial dispute with Russia. Moreover, by active participation in international operations, Georgia plays a very important role in preserving peace and stability across the whole Euro-Atlantic area. I strongly believe that, like all elements of NATO-Georgia relations, discussions held over the last days in different formats of NATO-Georgia cooperation will significantly contribute to the stability of the region, including by advancing Georgia on its Euro-Atlantic integration path. In the capacity of Georgian ambassador to NATO, I had a great honor to work with Secretary General in Brussels. Mr. Stoltenberg assumed his current role in the era of serious challenges existing across the globe. Namely, it was a time of still ongoing crisis in Ukraine, very alarming developments in the Middle East, and it was a period of transition from ISAF operation to resolute support mission in Afghanistan. By that time, when some voices tried to question NATO's credibility, Secretary General's personal effective engagement in this process and his impressive leadership played a key role in demonstrating allied solidarity and determination to defend NATO territory against any possible aggression. Secretary General effectively steered the process of implementation of the Readiness Action Plan approved in Wales and ahead of the Warsaw Summit, very successfully supported to the consolidation of member states' efforts aimed at achieving peace in Europe and wider globally. Despite a number of unique challenges NATO faced over the last years, NATO-Georgia relations, and more specifically, Georgia's NATO membership track, had never been weakened on NATO's agenda. Effective implementation of NATO-Georgia substantial package, including establishment of NATO-Georgia Joint Training and Evaluation Center, are vivid demonstration of NATO's strong continued support toward Georgia. Secretary General, your commitments to the decisions related to Georgia is very much appreciated in this country. Let me also very briefly emphasize that Georgian students, as part of Georgian society, have been playing a very important role in shaping policy-making process in Georgia since early days of Georgia's independence. I strongly believe that today's discussion will once again demonstrate irreversibility of the process, leading the country to a more secure and prosperous future. Secretary General, the floor is yours.
Minister, students, ladies and gentlemen, it's great to be back in Georgia, and thank you so much for your kind introduction. It's great to be back in Georgia, in Tbilisi, and to once again visit this beautiful country and to meet all the people and to once again experience the hospitality of the people of Georgia. As you said, this is my second visit to Georgia as Secretary General of NATO. But I have been there also before I became Secretary General of NATO. Actually, my first visit to Georgia was back in 1985. And then Georgia was a very different country. And that was back in the time when Europe was divided by armies, by walls, and by values. And since then, very much has changed. In 1985, Georgia was a Soviet republic. Now, Georgia is an independent state and a close partner of NATO, aspiring for NATO membership. So it is really a change that has taken place during these 30 years. And I remember also when I visited Tbilisi first time in '85, we stayed at the Inn Tourist Hotel. And that is very different from the hotel I stay at now. Also one expression of how things are changing in this country. So I joined the people of Georgia in celebrating your many achievements over the past quarter of a century. Perhaps the most important change has been how Georgia has embraced the fundamental values which unite so many countries across Europe. Democracy, freedom of speech, freedom of media, independence of the judiciary, protection of minorities. These are the values that unite us. These are the values that has been the core values of NATO since our foundation in 1949. We have had to defend those values in very different ways over many decades. For our first 40 years, NATO was focused on collective defense. Defending ourselves was about collective defense in Europe, and it meant lining up tanks along the West German border. A lot of heavy metal was the case back then. Then in 1989, the Berlin Wall came down. The Cold War ended, and the Soviet Union was dissolved. With the Cold War receding into the past, NATO entered a new phase. Our mission evolved from a pure collective defense mission to include what we call crisis management. As violence disrupted the Balkans and the threat of genocide erupted in Kosovo, for the first time, NATO sought to manage conflicts beyond our territory, to defend the lives of the people there, to prevent war from spreading in Europe, and to take a stand against massive abuses of human rights. This was a new role for NATO, but it was firmly in line with our commitments to universal values. After the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, NATO was called upon again. NATO and our partners went into Afghanistan to prevent that country from becoming a safe haven for international terrorists. Since then, NATO, with the help of Georgia, has been supporting the Afghan armed forces, which we have helped build from almost nothing to an effective force of more than 350,000 soldiers and police. And here in this National Library, on behalf of all NATO members and NATO partners, I want to express my deep gratitude to Georgia. You have stood side by side with NATO in Afghanistan for many, many years. And we recognize and deeply appreciate the sacrifices made by Georgian soldiers and their families. Your troops have made a real contribution to helping the Afghan people find a safer future, and they have helped keep us safe as well. And we are very grateful for that. Now, NATO is in our third important phase of our evolution, which in some ways began to take shape when Russia used military force here in Georgia back in 2008. Since then, Russia has kept unwanted troops in the Republic of Moldova, illegally annexed Crimea, destabilized eastern Ukraine, and is worrying the rest of Europe, for example, with the kind of massive, unannounced military exercises we are seeing right now. At the same time, we also face big challenges to the south. With the emergence of the so-called Islamic State, we have seen a tragic escalation of the civil war in Syria. A series of brutal terrorist attacks in several NATO countries, and the biggest migrant and refugee crisis in Europe since the end of the Second World War. So the world is changing, our security environment is changing, so NATO has to adapt, and when the world is changing, also NATO has to change. And that is exactly what we are doing. NATO is adapting to these new challenges from east and from the south. We have bolstered NATO's ability and readiness to defend our territory and our citizens. We are strengthening our collective defense and our collective deterrence. And we are enhancing our forward presence in the east of our alliance. In Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland, we will deploy by rotation 4 robust multinational battalions, 1 in each of the countries. We will also strengthen our posture in the southeastern part of the alliance, based around a Romanian framework brigade. This will be supplemented by steps to strengthen the readiness and the interoperability of air and maritime forces here in the Black Sea region. NATO does not seek confrontation. All of our measures are defensive, transparent, and in line with our international obligations. We don't want a new Cold War. We will continue to seek constructive and meaningful dialogue with Russia. And for us, there is no contradiction between strong defense, deterrence, and political dialogue with Russia. Actually, we strongly believe that as long as we are strong, as long as we provide credible deterrence, we can also engage in a political dialogue with Russia, our biggest neighbor and a neighbor which is here to stay. We are also taking significant steps to increase stability in our eastern and southern neighborhood. Because if our neighbors are more stable, we are more secure. In the east, we have reaffirmed our commitment to Ukraine, to the Republic of Moldova, and to Georgia, to help these countries resist outside pressure and advance crucial defense and security reforms. And as you know, we have agreed on the substantial NATO-Georgia package. We agreed it in 2014. This package of cooperation, of support, was strengthened at our summit in Warsaw in July. Allies are committed and determined to increase and intensify our level of support to Georgia. NATO experts work with their counterparts here in Georgia on a day-to-day basis to help strengthen our your defense capabilities, and to provide advice on planning, education, and cyber security. We have also increased training and exercises for troops from NATO, Georgia, and other countries, including through our new joint training center based right here in Tbilisi, and I had the honor of inaugurating that center when I visited Georgia a year ago. These are significant concrete measures to enhance Georgia's security and defense capabilities. NATO was founded by 12 nations in the shadow of the horrors and devastation of World War II. Gradually, our membership has more than doubled. Today, we have 28 member states, soon to be 29, with the expected addition of Montenegro. NATO's expansion over the years is the result of our open door policy. Georgia, too, has applied for NATO membership, and NATO agreed at our summit in Bucharest in 2008 that Georgia will become a member of NATO. We always advise aspiring members that the process of joining NATO takes time and patience. NATO has been working very closely with Georgia to assist your country on the path to eventual membership. Over the years, Georgia has been one of the biggest contributors to NATO operations, and NATO has more initiatives and programs in Georgia than in any other partner country. So today, there is more Georgia in NATO and more NATO in Georgia. NATO allies have been extremely impressed with the strides Georgia has made. We encourage Georgia to continue on the path toward economic, defense, and democratic reforms. We look forward to your elections next month, and we trust they will meet the highest democratic standards. The current visit to Georgia of the North Atlantic Council sends an important message. The friendship between NATO and Georgia is stronger than ever. For nearly 7 decades, NATO has helped to keep the peace in Europe. Allies have been united by a common set of values: democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. And we have forged an unbreakable bond between allies on both sides of the Atlantic. As the world has changed, NATO has changed. But we remain committed to our values, to our determination to defend one another, and to help promote peace and security for future generations. That was my introduction, and then I look forward to answer your questions. And I think it's important that we set aside some time for Q&As, because that's real interaction with all of you. And I'm looking forward to the Q&A session following my introduction. Thank you so much.